It was Barack Obama's chief of staff who coined the phrase that governments should never let a good crisis go to waste. It's since been embraced by both sides of the political divide. And in recent times, we see more government doing more and more as Australia progresses to become the Federation of Socialist States, which has the appropriately pronounced acronym FARCE. Naturally, we're told that it's all for our own good. The political left are using current circumstances to attack free market capitalism. The political right are adopting the big government policies of the left to save us all from each other. Scarcely a politician hasn't used this opportunity to push their own policy barrows. And strangely, each and every proposal put forward costs a mountain of money, it entrenches power in government, and it undermines the free market. Labor already thinks that doubling the dole needs to stay. Pauline Hanson wants government price controls and no foreign investment. And the Greens? Well, they're remaining silent, as most of their wish list is actually being implemented. There's no air travel, industry is being shut down, there's a giant welfare state. I could go on. And the Libs, well, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. The current economic woes have been a product of the decisions that they've taken, and yet they know they need to fix them. So they add further policy layers that only actually causes greater problems. It's going to end badly, and then we'll all have to decide what the future of government in our country should be. Can we really afford to give more power or authority over our lives to any government? Are we all destined to be simply vassals of the state, to be protected from the winds of adversity, whatever the cost? Or do we want to be a nation of individuals, accountable for ourselves and prepared to wear the consequences of personal decisions? Only one path is sustainable, and that is the path of less government. And the end of the current alarmism should be used to dismantle the bureaucracy, to bury the shibboleths of the left, acknowledge that socialism, under whatever guise it is presented, is a barrier to human achievement. And we need to dismantle the apparatus that has sprung up to support it. That's my view. Well, Michael, you know my views on bigger government. Will any future government, this one or another political stripe, have the will, the determination or the capacity to unwind the socialist state that is almost unprecedented, at least in our lifetimes?
Yeah, unprecedented in our lifetime, correct, Cory? Yes. Look, I think that was a very good point you raised, a number of very good points. They're going to have to, is the answer. I mean, this is simply financially unsustainable. And to a degree, you're right, the Greens are very quiet, the reason being their wish list is being lived. The reality, I think, is dawning on everybody, though, that as utopian as some of that might sound, universal basic incomes and all of this sort of stuff, I mean, you just can't afford it. You certainly can't afford it without a robust economy, and even then you struggle. So I think that one's... I think probably, to a degree, we're learning an economic lesson here, and that is beware of the Greens. But equally, everybody is taking advantage of the situation, or they will, and I think the Liberals or the right of politics shouldn't let this go to waste either. As you referenced Rahm Emanuel there, you never waste a crisis in politics. And I think off the back of this, if nothing else, tax should be something that the right have to look at here. If that means raising the GST to 15%, actuarials could do the number crunching on that. But in return, the inefficient taxes must go. And a lot of them are state taxes, payroll tax, stamp duty, of course, these sort of things. So there could be an opportunity here to really rework taxation. You can't have no taxation, but you've got to have efficient taxation, and I think this could be a chance off the back of this.
Michael, the great concern, of course, is, and I'd be really interested in, say, Sarah's perspective on this, is that governments will use the opportunity to raise taxes. They'll wipe out some other ones or reduce them to offset, but we know in the long run taxes will only go up. And I don't think families can afford it. I don't think Australia can afford to have higher taxes. The cost of living here is bad enough already. But Sarah, you know, you're a mum, family lady, working lady. What do you think about this?
Well, look, Cory, no one likes the idea of higher taxes, and it's a very brave government that ever dares to even publicly float it as an option going into an election. But I fear it's inevitable. The amount of money that we as taxpayers are having to foot to get the country through this certainly unprecedented in modern times crisis. We're going to be paying for it, literally paying for it for several years to come. But I think, like Michael said, you raise a lot of really valid points here. And, who would have thought that a government might try to exploit a crisis for its own ends, or any political party for that? But I think if you look at the overwhelming cynicism and public rejection of the government trying to get people to take up this tracking app, I think that's probably an indication that your concern that this might be the precursor to big government, I just don't see it happening. I think that Australia at the end of this is going to remain a country that is fond of minimalist government. And even though I do think that it is, like I say, unavoidable that we'll be hit with taxes, I don't think we're going to welcome the government regulating our lives or over-policing our lives once this is all over.
They're already there, unfortunately. Daisy, you're the one who's going to inherit this. What do you reckon?
Well, look, I mean, I've always considered myself a small government conservative. I think government should always be small and never fully trusted. And I think if you leave human beings alone to make decisions for themselves, the vast majority of the time they tend to make those right decisions, and that's when you have that small amount of government in there to help out the people who maybe don't do that. Now, I think what we've seen with the coronavirus is that, again, as a small government conservative, I can acknowledge there are certainly situations where a big government response is appropriate temporarily, and certainly we've seen these social distancing policies, much as they make my inner libertarian spidey senses go up. They have worked in lowering disease numbers and deaths. Certainly Australia has done better than pretty much anywhere else in the world. But as for taxes, I think the government has to, at all costs, avoid continuing this big government approach after all of this is over. And they will be under a lot of pressure from all sides to do that. But what Australians are craving now more than ever is freedom. And this whole big government thing is a taste of what life would be like, say, under radical climate change policies that the Greens are putting in. And it's awful. It's mass job loss. It's this weird, universal basic income. It's having our freedom of movement restricted. It's appalling. And I think what the government needs to do is free up Australians as much as they can. Don't raise taxes. Make it as easy on businesses as possible to get back into the swing of things and give their employees back their jobs and help people to thrive. And if the Liberal Party, which has long touted itself as the party of small government, of freedom, etc., I will never vote for them again if they start hoiking taxes to pay back all of this debt that we are now in. There's got to be other ways to do it if you just let people thrive. But certainly, as a millennial who will be footing this bill, I will never have my vote again.
Daisy and team, I'm really interested in this because at the end of this crisis, there is going to be competing pressures. You are going to have Labor saying you can't wind back the $550 for the dole. We don't want to see the welfare state reduced. You've got people out there already arguing debt doesn't matter. And that's going to be the ultimate battle. Are we going to have a place where no one any longer has the will to fight for the things about reducing government size, unleashing the free market, deregulating, making entrepreneurism flourish? Or are we going to have a stronger force that says, well, we don't mind having big debts, we don't mind people paying more taxes as long as we're all looked after in this nanny state? That's my fear. That's the battle that is coming.
That's a very good question, Cory. And look, the reality in Australian politics is, as far as the major parties are concerned, the only mob that are going to take up the cudgel which you advocate, which has to be taken up, as we've all agreed that this is financially unsustainable. In the short term, maybe some of it, of course, some of it is, not maybe, some is necessary, but in the long term it's impossible. And the only side that can do it is the coalition. As you say, the left have a predilection toward big things, big spending, big government, big brother. So it's going to have to come from the current mob in charge to wind it back. But again, on tax, another issue here, of course, which could be considered post this situation, and that is the coalition have struggled valiantly to a degree, but have struggled to prosecute the case in the Senate in particular for company tax cut reductions. Now, we saw that had a positive impact on the American economy when Trump got that through. There are a lot of governments around the world with very high company taxes, and their productivity is low. So there is some, I think, potential here as well to re-go that issue from the coalition. I think it's important that they do it. I'm sure some companies avoid tax, but the majority don't. You've got to get that down to boost productivity. And that's the only real path to growth for our economy. There is, of course, another option. We've been doing it for too long, and that's not growing the economy through productivity. That's growing the economy through procreation, or certainly through immigration. That comes actually at a per capita cost. So we've got to take down the numbers that we're bringing in. I mean, some of these levels, 200,000 a year, are ridiculous. We've got to up productivity, and I think the only way you're going to do that is via lowering taxes, and both private and business, the sooner the better.
Well, I absolutely agree with you, but I want to pick up on one point you made. You said it's the left of the parliament or the parliamentary divide that are so keen on nation-building issues. I mean, in recent times, we've seen outrageous spending in areas like, Snowy 2.0. We've got demands from the right of politics for governments to nationalise power industry and to build power stations and to regulate prices. It was the supposed right of the crossbench that voted against company tax cuts, and they treat it as if it's a virtue. I mean, the battle seems to have been lost, and that's what really worries me, when people just go, someone else will pay it.
Well, that's another reason why you need to get back in there, Cory. What are you doing here? You should be back in there prosecuting the case.
I'm encouraging others to pick up their cudgels and to take the fight to the Australian people. So I'm hoping Sarah will write about this all next week in Stella magazine. Is that right, Sarah?
We're going to do a whole issue on it, Cory. I think what is so fascinating, though, isn't it, is what is the Morrison government going to look like at the end of this? I mean, the policies and the behaviour that we've seen from this government in the last 2 months is something that no one would have predicted. I mean, forget the election result last year being unpredictable. What we have seen socialist policies being implemented by an allegedly conservative Liberal government. But again, as we were saying earlier, it's clearly a reaction to an unprecedented time. How will the government recover from that? And what will Morrison do? How will he reshape his government? Will they become a high-taxing government, or will he start winding back and they'll become a minimalist, low-spending government again? And then what does that leave for Anthony Albanese in the opposition? Because I think they're at a bit of a loss at the moment, because Morrison is he's playing the socialist card, and I don't think the Labor Party exactly know how to respond. They don't want to be seen to be exploiting this moment by being overtly negative. But how are they going to prosecute the next election when they really are going to struggle to be coming at Morrison from the left, aren't they?
This is a really good point. Sorry, Daisy.
Sorry. Well, no, I was just going to say, I think, all the points that we've all raised about this are valid. I just wanted to maybe give Cory a little bit of hope here. I think you should put your mind at ease about Australians maybe feeling like they're cushy and they're comfy and they're happy to be paid for, et cetera, et cetera. I think most people in this country crave to work. They crave to thrive. They crave enterprise. We were founded by diggers. We were founded by people who work hard. I mean, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who works retail, and of course she lost her job because of all of this. And I said, look, don't worry, there's government help there. And she said, Daisy, I don't want to be on the dole. I want to work. She said, I want to work. I don't want to. I feel like a beggar. I can't stand being on welfare like that. And I think that's probably the attitude of most people here. So I think there will be enough people making enough noise to hold the government to account and make sure that they don't continue these sweeping government policies forever after.